Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I do welcome the initiative my honourable friend has taken in applying and obtaining this debate, and I want to pick up a number of the important points that she made in an excellent speech. But I just wanted to begin, Madam Deputy Speaker, by commenting about the problem the government has over engagement with disabled people. We know that poverty is particularly focused amongst families living with disability. That's very clear, for example, in the work of the Social Metrics Commission, chaired by the noble Baroness Stroud, who was once the Special Advisor to the Right Honourable Member for Chingford when he was Secretary of State. So this is not a partisan point at all. Poverty is focused amongst those families. So it's not surprising that disabled people from time to time have cause to criticise the benefit system. And the DWP has tended, in the last few years in particular, I think, to respond to that by kind of pulling up the drawbridge and refusing to talk properly with people. And that's led to the fiasco that my honourable friend referred to of the disabilities strategy, launched with some fanfare in July of last year and then declared unlawful in January this year because of the failing in consultation with disabled people, and as far as I know it's still languishing, stuck, gone nowhere as a consequence. The Social Security Advisory Committee is appointed by the government. It contains experts, not politicians. It's chaired at the moment by Stephen O'Brien, who was one of the original architects with the Centre for Social Justice of Universal Credit. And they produced a useful paper in December 2020 called How DWP Involves Disabled People When Developing or Evaluating Programmes That Affect Them. Slightly long-winded title, but I think it's clear what it's about. And their report says this: DWP officials themselves acknowledge that the department is not trusted by many disabled people and by some of the organisations who are led by or work with disabled people. Our own research confirmed this. Some of the individuals we spoke to did not believe that the department engaged with disabled people's organisations or sought views from individual disabled people. There was also a widespread belief that DWP would not represent accurately disabled people's views when they did seek them. So the committee recommended that, I quote, DWP should develop a clear protocol for engagement. It should cover both national and local engagement. A clear, straightforward, I think constructive and helpful suggestion to try and overcome this very serious problem. But the department's response was simply to reject it. Recommendation rejected, the response said. The committee also recommended the department should routinely report on its engagement with disabled people. The department rejected that as well. I quote, "We believe that our existing reporting provides sufficient information on our engagement with disabled people and stakeholders." But I must say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that is not the view of disabled people. And indeed, a Conservative member of the House of Lords, the noble Lord Shinquin, told the Select Committee that, and I quote, "The DWP is handling its engagement with disabled people badly," and he went on to refer to the engagement as being handled, quote, "with palpable disrespect." And we now know it's not the view of the courts either, hence the fiasco over the disability strategy. The department commissioned a report from an external, very respected external agency to investigate the experiences of disabled people of the benefit system. And it talked to quite a large number of disabled people in order to carry out this research, and it told each of them, when asking if they'd take part in the study, that the results would be published, the report would be published. When ministers saw the report, however, they decided not to publish it. That is a very clear breach of the cross-government protocol on social research, which does require documents like that to be published. And actually, what the Select Committee did was to use its powers to obtain a copy of the report from the authors, and we published it, so it did then reach the public domain. But it's true, of course, that being open about criticisms and difficulties does expose ministers to awkward questions. But refusing open discussion, trying to keep things secret, trying to keep the lid on things, does far more damage than letting these debates take place in the open. And I warmly welcome the new minister to his post and his colleagues in the ministerial team. And I really hope they will take this opportunity to have a fresh look at this question, about how they deal with, how they talk to, how they engage with disabled people and their organisations. Because the practice of the team led by the previous Secretary of State, I think, was disastrous. And quite unnecessarily. There was no need to try and hide all these things. It would be far less damaging to be open and yes, sometimes have a robust exchange. But to try and keep it all hidden was very, very damaging and counterproductive. And as a first step on this, we've been told by the department that it is not going to publish the numbers of work capability assessments that it carries out each month. I've no idea why that isn't going to be published. It's absolutely basic and fundamental data. Well, I suppose the reason is that if people know how many are being carried out, they're going to ask awkward questions about what's going on. But it's another example of this very damaging and counterproductive attempt to bury what's really happening.
Will they give way?
I'll gladly give way.
I'm sorry, I came late to the debate because I was delayed in traffic, another meeting. But can I remind my right honourable friend, some of the concerns that have been expressed by disabled organisations over the years commenced largely around the WCA, when, if I remember the honourable gentleman doing, included a number of us, when we were simply asking the DWP, were they monitoring, for example, the consequences and the impact of WCA on certain vulnerable people and the suicides that were taking place. They denied us that knowledge at that point in time. So you can understand why a number of disability organisations are sceptical about the role of the department itself.
Yes, I think my honourable friend is absolutely right. There is quite a long history to this. But my sense is that in the last few years it's got considerably worse. The department has stopped publishing things that obviously should be published and answering perfectly reasonable questions. And I think it's very badly damaged its reputation with disabled people as a result. And I very much hope that the new ministerial team will want to rebuild those links and rebuild trust. My honourable friend made some very important points about the disability employment gap. Many disabled people would like to work but can't, and that gap has increased in the last 2 quarters. There's been a damaging impact, I think, from the pandemic. A steep rise in the number of people since the pandemic who've been out of work on health grounds. We urgently need to be able to support disabled people who would like to work into jobs as one of the key opportunities to tackle the current labour shortage. There's a big opportunity there that we can take advantage of. So in July last year, the Select Committee published its report on the disability employment gap. Shortly before the 2015 general election, David Cameron announced a target to halve the disability employment gap. That target was scrapped shortly after the 2015 general election. We want it reinstated. Our report called for a radical overhaul of employment support for disabled people. The big national work and health programme is helpful, but it's not working for many people. And the truth is, and I think we can all recognise this, that smaller specialist providers are often best placed to deliver the help that's needed. And you have to be on the ground locally to know who can do the best job. You can't commission that kind of support from Whitehall. So we propose that funding for this employment support should be devolved. Where the capacity exists, We want groups of local authorities, probably based on the new NHS integrated care system boundaries, to be responsible for commissioning and delivering employment support for disabled people. The department should allocate funding, should monitor performance, should publish detailed comparative performance data, but shouldn't itself deliver the support. The support should be closely integrated with the health service locally, with colleges and voluntary sector groups as well. In its response to our report, the department didn't reject that idea, but it's not moved in that direction at all since, I think. I very much hope that it will. My honourable friend was right in what she said about access to work. That's vital to overcoming work-related obstacles resulting from disability. It's a lifeline for many, but it's not well enough known. Many employers don't know about it, and it is dogged, as my honourable friend said, by a bureaucratic and extraordinarily cumbersome application process which puts people off and leaves many in limbo, while once they do apply, they then have to wait quite a long time sometimes to find out what support they're going to receive. If somebody benefits from access to work in one job and then changes job, they've got to go back to square one. There should be a passporting arrangement, as my honourable friend argued. If they apply for a new job, their potential new employer at the moment can't be certain in advance what, if any, help access to work will provide. The Minister's predecessor told the Select Committee about a planned digital transformation for access to work, which I hope will address these obvious failings, and I hope the department will involve disabled people themselves in a redesign of the access to work programme. And I'd be particularly grateful if the Minister, in winding up, could give us an update on the progress of that initiative. Yes, I can.
I thank the honourable member for giving way, and he's making some really powerful points. Would you agree with me that where there's a limit on individual, a cap on individual benefits through the Access to Work scheme, that stops some people getting everything they deserve, while there's money left lying in other pools for this purpose?
The honourable lady is quite right, and my honourable friend in opening made that point as well, and I think that's unhelpful and it should be removed. We also called in our report for larger employers to be required to publish the proportion of their employees who are disabled, and my honourable friend referred rightly to disability pay gap reporting, and like her, the Select Committee thinks it's high time for a rigorous evaluation of the well-intentioned disability confident scheme. For our current inquiry, we conducted a survey of personal independence payment and employment support allowance claimants. And my honourable friend has referred to the experiences of some of those applicants as well. We are going to be publishing our report from that inquiry soon, but it was striking how many respondents to that inquiry, to that survey, said that the assessments had damaged their mental health. They described the assessments. Many respondents said that they were humiliating, they were undignified, or even in some cases that they were traumatic. There's a serious backlog at the moment for personal independence applications. Yes, I'll gladly give way.
Can I thank my right friend for giving way? But he's making a really interesting point about the negative and also long-lasting impact that the assessment frameworks for employment and support allowance, RPIP, is having. And would he agree with me that now is the time to actually overhaul these assessment frameworks to something that is co-created with disabled people, but that is less intrusive and really focuses on providing the essential support and the extra cost of living support that is needed?
I agree with my honourable friend. There is a big job to be done, and I think involving disabled people in doing it would be a very important part of the solution. There's also a backlog at the moment for industrial injuries disablement benefit. And it remains the case, as my honourable friend has pointed out, that when people appeal against an adverse PIP decision, the great majority win their appeal, which shows pretty clearly that there's something going badly wrong at the moment. The department did introduce some welcome imaginative flexibility in assessments during the pandemic, and I pay tribute to those who came up with some new ways of doing things when obviously the old ways couldn't be applied during the pandemic. Telephone assessments, video assessments, and in taking advantage of those long term, I think it's quite important to maintain flexibility. So for some people, able to be assessed at home over the telephone or via a video link avoids an enormous amount of distress. It's a real boon. But for others, it is important to be able to talk about their impairment face to face, and they're happy to travel to an assessment centre in order to do so. I don't think there's a kind of single solution here, but the flexibility that's been introduced of late will be valuable, I think. The Equality and Human Rights Commission is in negotiation with the Department on a Section 23 agreement over the protection of vulnerable claimants, arising from grave concern that we've heard about already, about claimants who've been badly treated by the department, too often having lost their benefits or being sanctioned when the issue was, for example, a known and serious mental health problem. Too many benefit claimants have, as we've already been reminded, taken their lives in these circumstances. So I welcome the initiative that the Equality and Human Rights Commission has taken, and I very much hope that the Section 23 agreement will be concluded and published soon. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, the new ministerial team has the chance, I think, to establish a new, much more positive relationship with disabled people based on openness in place of defensiveness. And I do urge, in welcoming the new minister to his post, I urge him to take that opportunity.
Yeah.